March 24, 2023. The courtroom fell silent as 16-year-old Aiden Fucci stood before Judge R. Lee Smith waiting to hear words that would seal his fate forever. This was not just any sentencing. This was the moment a teenager who had shocked the entire nation with a crime so brutal, so senseless, that seasoned investigators struggled to comprehend it was about to receive what many consider a fate far worse than death itself. Life in prison with the possibility of review after 25 years. But here is what most people do not understand. That possibility of review is not mercy. It is psychological torture. It is dangling hope in front of someone while knowing that hope will almost certainly never materialize. And the conditions Fucci faces behind bars are so harsh and unrelenting that many inmates would choose the quick finality of execution over decades of this existence. Stay with me, because what you are about to discover will completely change how you think about life imprisonment versus the death penalty. And here is the most shocking part. This case is back in the headlines right now in December 2025, and what is happening to Fucci at this very moment proves everything I am about to tell you. Judge R. Lee Smith did not mince words during the sentencing. He called Fucci's crime one of the most difficult and shocking cases he had ever presided over in his entire career. And when you understand what Fucci did, you will see why. On Mother's Day weekend 2021, 14-year-old Aiden Fucci lured his 13-year-old classmate and friend Tristan Bailey into the woods near their homes in St. Johns County, Florida. What happened next was beyond comprehension. Tristan Bailey was stabbed 114 times. Let that number sink in for a moment. 114 stab wounds. The medical examiner found 49 defensive wounds on her body, meaning this young girl fought desperately for her life as Fucci attacked her again and again and again. This was not a moment of rage. This was not an accident. This was sustained, deliberate violence that went on and on. But here is what makes this case even more disturbing. Judge Smith made it crystal clear during sentencing. This was not done out of greed. It was not done in retaliation or revenge. It was not a crime of passion. It was not because Fucci felt rejected by her. There was no reason. There was no purpose. Fucci killed Tristan Bailey simply because he wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone and watch them die. Think about that for a second. A 14-year-old boy murdered a 13-year-old girl just to satisfy his curiosity about death. The judge went on to say that Fucci's behavior was so unusual compared to individuals his age that there was a poor prognosis for any meaningful change. That statement right there sealed Fucci's fate in ways most people never fully grasp. When you are sentenced to life in prison as a teenager, you are not just losing your freedom. You are losing your entire identity, your entire future, your chance to become anything other than an inmate. Every milestone that other young people take for granted becomes impossible. No graduation ceremony, no first real job, no first apartment, no relationships, no family of your own, no career, no dreams, just concrete walls and steel bars stretching into an endless future. And now here is where the story takes an even darker turn. Just this past January 2025, Fucci was transferred from Sewanee Correctional Institution, where he had been since his sentencing. First, he went to the Reception and Medical Center West Unit in Lake Butler, and then just weeks ago in late January he was moved to Cross City Correctional Institution in Dixie County. The Florida Department of Corrections calls this a routine transfer, but let me tell you something. Nothing about Fucci's situation is routine. Reports indicate that Fucci had been involved in a fight at Sewanee back in June 2023. While officials claim the transfer was not disciplinary, the timing raises questions. What is really happening to Fucci behind bars? What is he facing every single day that makes this punishment worse than death? Cross City Correctional Institution is not some comfortable facility. This place opened in 1972 on the grounds of a decommissioned Air Force station. Think about that symbolism. A place once meant for training defenders of freedom is now a warehouse for society's most dangerous criminals. Cross City houses over 1,800 adult male offenders across multiple security levels. For someone like Fucci, this means living among murderers, armed robbers, and career criminals who have spent decades behind bars. But it gets worse. Much worse. Let me break down what Fucci's actual daily existence looks like, because this is where you will start to understand why death might seem like mercy. Every single morning at 5:30 a.m., fluorescent lights flood his cell. There is no gentle awakening, no alarm clock you can hit snooze on, just harsh artificial light cutting through the darkness. This is the beginning of another identical day in what will likely be thousands upon thousands of identical days. At 6 a.m. breakfast arrives through a slot in his cell door. Powdered eggs and watery oatmeal. Lukewarm coffee that barely resembles anything from the outside world. For a teenager who once had access to fast food family dinners and the simple freedom of choosing what to eat, every meal is a reminder of complete dependence. He eats what they give him when they give it to him. Communication with the outside world is severely restricted in ways that create their own form of psychological torture. Phone calls are monitored and limited to 2 free 5-minute conversations per month. Every word spoken to family or friends is recorded. Paid calls can extend to 30 minutes, but for a teenager whose entire social world once revolved around constant communication through phones and social media, this feels like suffocation. There are no incoming calls allowed. No spontaneous conversations. No privacy whatsoever. Visiting restrictions add another layer of isolation. All visitors over 12 years old must complete an approved application that can take up to 30 days to process. Visits are by appointment only on weekends and holidays, running from 9 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. These are not normal family visits. They are controlled interactions in monitored rooms where every word is watched and recorded. These visits remind everyone involved that Fucci is property of the state. Here is what makes Fucci's situation particularly devastating. While his former classmates from St. Johns County are now graduating high school, starting college, beginning careers, falling in love, getting married, having children, Fucci faces the same concrete walls every single day. He is frozen in time while the entire world moves forward without him. Social media posts, news updates, occasional visits, all serve as constant painful reminders of a world that continues without him. His peers are living the life he will never have. And here is the cruelest irony of all. That sentence review possibility after 25 years actually makes his punishment worse, not better. Unlike inmates with no hope of release, Fucci must live with the knowledge that freedom might be possible but remains incredibly unlikely. This creates a unique form of psychological torture where hope and despair battle constantly in his mind. He must maintain perfect behavior for 25 years. He must participate in programs. He must show remorse. He must demonstrate change. And he must do all of this knowing that the same judge who called his rehabilitation prospects poor will ultimately influence any review decision. The judge who said his behavior was so unusual that meaningful change seemed impossible. What are the realistic chances that after 25 years, when Fucci is 39 years old, the parole board will look at someone who killed a 13-year-old girl 114 times just to see what it felt like and decide he deserves freedom? Almost zero. But let me tell you about something even worse than the physical conditions. The psychological impact of being a young notorious offender in adult prison. Prison staff and fellow inmates quickly recognize young offenders like Fucci, and the treatment they receive is often harsher than what older criminals experience. There is a particular contempt in prison culture for those who commit violent crimes at such a young age, especially against other children. Fucci's case received massive national media attention. His crime details are well known throughout the facility. This makes him a target. Inmates seeking to prove themselves. Guards who view him with disgust. Both create daily threats to his safety. Remember that fight he got into at Sewanee in June 2023? That was not an isolated incident. That is his reality now. Constant vigilance and constant threat. Constant awareness that violence could erupt at any moment. The daily routine at Cross City grinds away at psychological well-being through sheer monotony and control. Recreation hour represents the cruelest illusion of freedom. For 60 minutes, Fucci is allowed into a concrete yard surrounded by razor wire and guard towers. The sky above might be blue, but it is framed by barriers designed to remind him that even this small taste of open space is controlled and temporary. Other young people his age are driving cars, going to beaches, traveling, exploring the world. Fucci walks in circles in a concrete box, counting down the minutes until he returns to his cell. Mental health experts who study long-term incarceration have identified particular risks for young offenders. The human brain continues developing until the mid-20s. Prolonged isolation during these crucial years can cause permanent psychological damage. Depression, anxiety, psychosis. These become more likely when normal social development is completely disrupted. Fucci's personality is being shaped not by normal life experiences but by concrete walls, steel bars, and the absence of meaningful human connection. He is becoming institutionalized. His identity is being rebuilt around the prison system. By the time he reaches that 25-year review, he will have spent more of his life behind bars than he spent in freedom. The letters that arrive for Fucci paint a disturbing picture of how the outside world views him. Unlike celebrity inmates who receive fan mail, most correspondence directed to Fucci expresses disgust, anger, and hatred. People from across the country write to remind him of what he did. They describe in graphic detail their opinions of his character and what they hope happens to him in prison. Each piece of mail adds another weight to the psychological burden he carries every day. Sleep becomes elusive for young inmates facing life sentences. While other teenagers worry about homework, relationships, or college applications, Fucci lies awake thinking about decades of identical tomorrows stretching endlessly ahead. The darkness in his cell is not peaceful. It is filled with the knowledge that he will wake up in the same place tomorrow and the day after that and potentially every day for the next 50 or 60 years. The appeals process offered a particularly cruel form of hope. Fucci's legal team challenged the sentence, but in March 2025, the 5th District Court of Appeal upheld the trial court's ruling. They found only a minor clerical error regarding a public defender application fee, which was corrected from $100 to $50. For someone clinging to any possibility of change, even this tiny legal victory felt meaningless when the core sentence remained unchanged. Every failed appeal reinforces the permanence of his situation. Every rejected motion is another door slamming shut. Another reminder that there is no escape from this fate. Now let me paint you the complete picture of what the next 25 years look like for Aiden Fucci. He is currently 18 years old. By the time he is eligible for sentence review, he will be 39. That is 21 more years of waking up at 5:30 a.m. to fluorescent lights. 21 more years of eating whatever comes through that slot in his door. 21 more years of monitored phone calls and supervised visits. 21 more years of walking in circles in a concrete yard. 21 more years of sleeping in a cell. 21 more years of being told when to wake, when to eat, when to sleep, when to move. Think about how much life happens in 21 years. Fucci will miss his entire 20s and most of his 30s. The years when most people find themselves, build careers, form lasting relationships, start families, travel the world, create memories, live life. All of that is gone for him. And even if by some miracle the review board grants him release at 39, he will emerge into a world he no longer recognizes. Technology will have advanced. Society will have changed. Everyone he knew will have moved on with their lives. He will have no work experience. No education beyond what limited programs prison offers. No connections outside the criminal justice system. But here is the reality that most people do not want to acknowledge. That review will almost certainly not grant him release. Not for someone who committed a crime this brutal at such a young age. Not for someone whose only motive was wanting to experience killing. The most likely scenario is that Fucci will die in prison. Whether at 50 or 60 or 70, he will spend his entire adult life behind bars. And this is where we need to talk about something controversial. Many people say life imprisonment is better than the death penalty. They argue that death is too easy, that criminals should suffer for what they did, that taking the easy way out through execution is not real justice. But after learning everything about Fucci's existence, I want you to really think about this question. Which is truly worse? A relatively quick execution after years of appeals? Or 50 to 60 years of this daily grinding existence? Waking up every single day knowing you will die in this place. Watching yourself age in a cell. Seeing the world continue without you through tiny glimpses. Never experiencing freedom again. Never having privacy. Never making a real choice about your own life. Some people call the death penalty cruel and unusual punishment. But what about this? What about taking a 14-year-old and ensuring he spends every single day for the rest of his natural life in a concrete box? Is that not cruel? Is that not unusual? I am not saying Fucci deserves sympathy. What he did to Tristan Bailey was absolutely horrific. He took a young girl's entire future away from her in the most brutal manner imaginable. Her family will never see her graduate, never see her get married, never meet her children. She will never experience any of the things that make life worth living. But I am asking you to really consider what justice means. Is this living death that Fucci faces actually justice? Or is it something else? Is it revenge? Is it society's need to ensure that some people suffer for as long as possible? The question is not whether Fucci deserves punishment. He absolutely does. The question is whether this specific form of punishment, this decades-long psychological torture disguised as mercy because it is not death, is really better than execution. Here is what we know for certain. Aiden Fucci, as of December 2025, is currently housed at Cross City Correctional Institution serving a life sentence for the murder of Tristan Bailey. His appeal has been denied. His transfer to a new facility suggests that his time in prison is not going smoothly. The reality of his situation is setting in more deeply every single day. He has at minimum 21 more years before he can even hope for review. And that hope is almost certainly false hope. This is his life now. This is all his life will ever be. Concrete and steel and endless repetition until he dies. So I want you to think about this and then comment below. After hearing everything about Aiden Fucci's daily existence in prison, do you still think life imprisonment is better than the death penalty? Is what he is experiencing really more humane than execution? Or have we just found a way to torture people for decades while calling it justice? The answer might not be as simple as you thought when you started watching this video. Because when you really look at what life in prison means, when you see the daily grinding away of humanity and hope, when you understand that this is not temporary but permanent until death finally comes decades later, you start to wonder if we have created something far worse than the death penalty. That is the reality of Aiden Fucci's life behind bars. And that is why some people argue this fate is actually worse than death itself.